Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm so glad that you're here and joining us for From Lame to Game, transforming your legacy content for a modern serve up. Those of you who are joining, I'd love for you to use the chat pane and say hi and tell me where you're joining from. My name is Ann Rollins, and I am joining from Denver, Colorado, and just really glad to see everyone. And, kind of as we get started here, I'm wondering if anyone has been following the scavenger hunt. Ooh, Colorado Springs, Chicagoland. Wonder if anyone's following the scavenger hunt. And maybe if you've taken a little trip back in time to the amazing 60s. So there might be a clue or two that's hidden along the way, or maybe not so hidden. But for those of you who have not engaged with the AR, I sure would love for you to do that. So, my name is Ann Rollins, and my best friend, partner in crime, and colleague at the Ken Blanchard Companies, Brittany, is here also. And we're so excited to be able to talk with you about some of the things we've been doing at Blanchard that from bumps and bruises of these last 2 years, we've come out with a lot of really great stuff to be able to share with our community. So just quick intros. I'm Ann. I'm a solutions architect. I've been in the L&D field for almost 30 years. Blanchard, I've been there for 2 years. Prior to that, I was a global learning strategist and helping global clients to kind of rethink how learning happens in their enterprises and then be able to create very targeted learning solutions that are designed to meet the needs of very, very large populations. Brittany, do you want to say hi and introduce yourself to everyone? We can't hear you, Brittany. Oh no. I am going to introduce Brittany. So Brittany is our VP at the Ken Blanchard Companies of Solution Architecture and Innovation. And so she is my leader at Blanchard. She and I worked together in a previous organization. And we have been speaking on the conference circuit for about 5 or 6, 7 years at this point. Where we're tinkerers and practitioners at heart. And so we love to share what works. And we also love to be able to share the cautionary tales like, hey, don't do that. We tried that and it kind of blew up. So, anyway, today we're talking about how do you transform legacy content for our learners. So, as we get started, I'd love to hear from you in the chat pane. All things considered and no COVID, is what you did in these last 2 years, what you would have done if you had taken a planned approach and COVID had not entered the scene. And I'd love to see in the chat pane kind of your reaction to that question. And I'd love to hear, if you, or hear, or what are your learners saying about the learner experiences that they are having today? So let's take a moment and go to the chat pane. And Brittany, when you get to a point, I see a lot of no's here. When you get to a point where you've got things you think you got audio working, give me an audible so I know I can include you in the discussion. I don't hear you yet. Nope, she's still muted. All right, I love seeing, it's not what I would have done. Yes and no. Not really, but it really moved us forward in our evolution. And truly, I mean, I call it a drop kick in the pants, basically for the industry. On my after chat last evening, I talked about it's been very stressful these last 2 years, but boy, this has been literally our moment in time and in our career lifetimes where we've had opportunities to do things and innovate at a rate that probably would have never happened. So kept to e-learning modules for regulatory learning only. Landscape wouldn't have changed much. Added and switched ILTs to VILTs, mostly good responses. Some folks said no, it's not what they would have done. Well, let's talk about, we're going to share a story at Blanchard, but really the thing that we have learned is that to be considered a strategic business partner in L&D, you've got to be able to think differently from a planning perspective, through your design, through building, because our learners are consuming differently and we need to be thinking about that. Oh, I love it. I'm so excited to see learners are liking the digital learning journeys, giving them opportunities to interact with people all over. That's a beautiful, beautiful, almost unintended consequence. We knew it would happen. By creating these global cohorts and bringing people together. And really, It's been this really beautiful thing. They're loving digital learning. We've given a lot more control to our learners than we have in the past. But I'd like for you to think about when the world changed almost 2 years ago now. I mean, last time I spoke at a live conference was at ATD TK 2020, and literally within weeks of that, the world had shifted. And so this picture, does this go back like to this crazy, crazy image? Like suddenly everything looked like this, and now everything, things that we hadn't touched because it was working great, suddenly had to be shifted. And it's like I look at this video and I can almost smell it, right? It was just a machine. We've got to move, we've got to move, we've got to repackage, we've got to reserve, we've got to rethink about how our learning is happening and what that looks like across the enterprise and the organization. And so think about it for a moment. As we get into this, I want you to think about one of your learning solutions that could really use an overhaul. I'm kind of keeping an eye on the chat pane as we're going through this, but I want to draw your attention to the Q&A module. So if you have questions, you can put it in there. And certainly as my partner in crime is back in here, we'll be able to kind of tag team that chat pane. So I want you to keep in mind a solution that you're thinking about needs an overhaul. And when we talk about, it's almost like a content quick change approach, and rethinking the content, we think about it in 3 phases. First, slow your roll and take stock of what you've got. Then you're going to shake it up and serve it out in some new format. And then you might want to explore and experiment and try new things and see if it works. But certainly we'll talk about these different phases in this kind of an approach and how we approached it at Blanchard with one of our premier programs. Because at Blanchard, imagine, my world before joining Blanchard, and I joined in January of 2020, coming from a world of emerging learning technology and really, being able to situate a chatbot into a learning solution or a VR experience as part of a learning solution. And coming to Blanchard was at this inflection point where they were in the process of starting this massive, it was to be a transformation from largely face-to-face. When the world changed, Blanchard, 90% of all of their training was delivered face-to-face. So you can imagine that for a moment. In March of 2020, 90% of the business was face-to-face. And so this was a process that had to go through every single program around the world with our global partners as well. So taking stock, we knew we needed to change literally everything. So we were in a similar circumstance to many folks. And if we think about 2 years ago, the conferences that we attended, our master's programs that we were part of, how much airtime in those programs was given to virtual instructor-led training? I'd love for you in the chat pane. I want you to think about it as you attended conferences, as you completed your degree programs, what proportion of your learning was committed to creating great virtual designs and great designs that included anything except face-to-face? Go ahead and pop that number in the chat pane. I'd love to see what you thought. Yep. Anyone have a percentage guess that you'd like to take? Not enough. It's like we were all, I'm going to be sassy. We were all caught with our pants down is what my dad would have called it at that point. Almost none. Like 8 to 10% of the total airtime was given to VILT designs. And suddenly now the full shift where we're really looking at, in many organizations, it's at that 60% because you can't just flip a switch and make everything e-learn. You can't do it. The quickest way to convert was to go VILT. So anyhow, I'm really looking at, before we made changes, taking stock of the purpose, progress, things that already exist. What is the process that we're going to take to create something new? And then thinking about, we have a lot more agency than we think we have to do things new and different. And so for those of you who are now looking back at the things you've done and going, man, that's not really how I would have done it if I'd actually had the time or space to think about it, this is the session that will help kind of walk through. So taking stock of your purpose, it's like, what do your learners really need to be able to do and produce? 2, we need to transition from what do they know to what can they do and what can they produce. And so it's really a shift. Whereas a lot of learning before was really focused on first time learning. And when we have a 4-hour session in a classroom, when we have the ability to build out long form e-learning programs, a lot of times it's focused on what do they need to know, not what can they do with it. And so this shift in our time and space in the industry really allowed us to flip the needle and really look at what do they need to be able to do first, and back that up into creating journeys that happen over time and allow for opportunities, not for just for learning, but for application, for being able to reflect on it and refine approaches. So that's the first piece. And so taking stock of progress, when is the last time that you explored what your learners are really learning on the job? So much of our training focused on giving them a lot of a very, I call it, the first moment of learning, which is that formal learning. But a lot of times they actually don't need all that we're giving. And so there's a lot of things that are happening in the flow of work that we can really tap into to give loft to kind of shorter, more compressed times that we have with our learners when they're all together. And so given where we are today, it's time to ask that question again. And if you haven't had a moment to do that, this is the time to do that. Taking stock of the process. So what technology is in play today? So consider what you're currently using and what you're not using for learning. So in a lot of organizations, we want to be able to create these social learning experiences, but most LMSs simply have no capability or feature functionality that does that or does it well. Even like a Degreed or an Edcast or other large LXPs that allow us to curate beautiful content libraries, the social learning aspects of that are not simple to manage. And the out of the box functionality, you might have learners, you might want to ask them a question, and you're having to have your learners go through, seeing everything that every person has ever said versus a very targeted cohort aspect. But so thinking about, leveraging Teams discussions and weaving that into a natural part of a learning experience that happens over time that integrates, say, formal moments of VILT woven with some microlearns, some one-on-one leader discussions, and some discussions that are happening through some type of technology. And so let's talk about taking stock of your prowess really quickly. How are you measuring and sustaining what you're delivering? So thinking about that, learning that is created is not measured in a meaningful way in most cases. And so thinking about how are we going to assess not only what they learned, but their capability and their readiness to apply what was learned, and then being able to check in with learners down the line, and even possibly doing some things that are multi-rater that involve the people working around and really getting a good sense of how people are applying what they're learning, which is why we're all here today, is because organizations want to see the performance needle move. I love what I'm seeing in the chat pane. How will we know we're going to be successful? Which is the most important but least applied question. And that is absolutely right. At Blanchard, when we're working with our clients, one of the very first steps that we have with them is a collaborative design session. And in that collaborative design session, typically we're talking about question number one: what does good look like? And what do we want? If we could wave a magic wand as a result of this program, what are your leaders doing that they're not doing today? And we start there and we work it back and we build the program to the answers to those two questions. And then within there, it's aligning the right content, but also kind of backing things up and using learner personas to ensure that as we begin the design, we're really starting with the who first and not necessarily the what. So I want to share a story that really, when we're talking about transforming legacy content into resonant experiences that really meet our modern learners' needs. And this is a great story to tell. I'll tell you what, when I started at Blanchard, going back to like, we got caught with our pants down, the endeavor of the work in front of us literally scared the pants off of me. And I've been doing this for my entire career, coming from emerging technology and being able to create grand solutions for clients around the globe. I was scared to death. And I know that that's how probably pretty much of everyone on the call felt, that this is our moment to save the organizations we're working for and to make sure that people have the skills that they need to be able to carry on. So I'm going to tell you about our self-leadership program, which was the very first one that we dug deep on, rolled up our sleeves. Thanks, Brittany. I know that you're focusing on chat. I appreciate it. Oh yeah, I'm telling you what, I've never been so scared. I was super excited to start a new job, and then I was suddenly terrified. I don't know that I've ever had that kind of dichotomy, but guess what? The story is an incredible success, and I think there are a lot of great things that you'll learn along the way. But so the program, Self Leadership, designed for individual contributors, really kind of the things that, and kind of just a little bit of background. Really, individual contributors are the engine that drives any organization, and the bad news is so many of them aren't engaged because they're busy. And especially in the last 2 years, we've seen this as well. This is kind of the setup for the program, just so that you can get kind of an idea of what the program's about. So self-leadership focuses on 3 mindsets: activating points of power, like, my boss has position power, and I've got a friend who's a friend of the boss, and she's got relationship power. So understanding power around me and what that looks like. The second is challenging assumed constraints. It really is a mindset that helps people get in front of that negative self-talk that's really, really damaging to a people's sense of pride in work and engagement. And then tools to help them be proactive. And so skill set, goal setting, diagnosing, and matching. And so basically, these are the things that are taught in this program. And so I would love to hear, let's go back to the learning solution you're focusing on. I'm going to show the self-leadership story, which was our focus, the project where we had to really think differently. But I'd love to see what learning solution or project are you going to start thinking differently about as we get into the nuts and bolts and the tools that will help you do that. I'd love to see it in the chat pane. You have a project in mind, an onboarding program or a customer care program, go ahead and hit it in the chat pane, and Brittany will kind of feed that back, and I'll keep an eye on it. So kind of that second step is shaking it up. Remember, we're taking stock and then we're shaking it up. A competency-based learning. Ooh, learning in the flow of work. I love it. Onboarding, IT, learning paths for IT, emerging leader program. Yay! I love emerging leaders, leader development, more onboarding. Really great. I think there are going to be some awesome pearls you'll take. So when we're talking about shaking it up and serving it out, considering the tools in your toolbox, what do you have? What do you need to acquire? And so when we're examining a coaching program for post-onboarding, I love that. Ooh, a legacy course for customer service. Onboarding, very nice. Leader development. Ooh, you guys are going to be able to take some tools and start using them literally tomorrow at work. So really thinking about what tools do we have, then examining your program content bit by bit. How could it look different from concept through inception? So self-leadership, back to our case study. It existed in 8 hours of ILT. It covered, remember, those 3 mindsets and the 3 skill sets. Blanchard's model, whenever we're designing anything, period, our model is 30% learning, 70% applying. So whether it's in an instructor-led program, a virtual program, an e-learn program, that's kind of our heuristic for how we approach design. And so at how many pieces, I'd like to ask, so it was 8 hours, 3 skill sets, 3 mindsets. How many individual learning assets do you think that we created when we pulled it apart? We literally, like a picnic, we're at a picnic, we've got our blanket, wham, and we just shook out. Yes, absolutely. The slides will be available, and there's also some really great tools that we'll be sharing at the end too. So I'd like for you to think, 8 hours of content, how many individual discrete learning assets do you think we created when we pulled it apart to tell a new story in a different way? I'd love to see your guesses. 35. Brittany, you're responsible for writing down the guesses. 35, 25, and you're going to text me the people who were closest, because Brittany and I are BFFs, so I got her right here. So anyway, I'm seeing 45, 100, 24, 9, 75. Great guesses, everyone. So again, a quick peek at our model and what the program is designed to do for those of you who are formulating your guesses. Great, 40, 42. Seeing a lot of things. Ooh, 118. That's an interesting number, 150. All right, moving along. So how do we do that? Basically, when I talk about shaking it out, I literally mean like shaking it out. And as we go through, this is a tool that you'll have access to. It's a simple Excel spreadsheet, but I want to talk to you about the power in a tool like this when you are looking at rebuilding something. So in columns A, B, and C, we are literally taking the program and identifying nugget by nugget. What is the topic? How is it delivered today? And even we also had kind of we knew the amount of time for the current topic area. How is it delivered, and what are our new options for serving it up in a new and different way? And so here is where we start brainstorming. So here we've got our pre-work, and this is just a sample, but this is the way we approach the Self-Leadership Project. This is the way that Brittany and I have approached global sales, re-envisioning for thousands of salespeople around the world, and really taking something that was onerous, ILT, hard to scale. And when ILT goes away, you've got to do something different and have a smart way to frame it out. And so we take whatever we had and what the time we had, and we envision what are the new ways that this content could be delivered. And this is the opportunity to be really, really creative, because things like a Cosmo quiz or a prep checklist, things that you wouldn't necessarily put together and string together for an ILT or maybe even a VILT, but certainly it allows us to strip the whole program down to its nimblest, discrete nuggets that were used. For instance, some pre-work or an experience introduction, a lecture. If we look down at row 8, a lecture with some discussion. This could be turned into a brief animation that introduces the goals. This could be an executive sponsor video that they shot. Guess what? They shot it on their iPhone. We gave them some simple guardrails on this, and we're able to, produce a quick video that becomes a digital asset that blends into what that journey is. And so using this tool allows us to then discern what are our options, what could it look like, what is that new timing going to look like, what are the benefits of a new format, and then to be able to socialize a plan like this with our client. And internally at Blanchard, this was really, really important, because at Blanchard, we are an author. Our programs are written by authors, and they are intellectual property of our authors. And so when we start talking about taking a program that is tried and true and tested, that the author was integral in creating, and really in casting that initial modality story and breaking it out in this way, it becomes easier to talk about as learning professionals. What are the benefits of us going to this kind of a form and a delivery method? So for all of you as practitioners working in your organizations, if you're talking about breaking apart an onboarding program, chances are onboarding is owned by L&D. But when you start getting into IT training and customer care and sales training, you're talking about stakeholders in other areas of the business. And so being able to walk them through how it's happening today, what could it look like in the new, what is the new timing, what are the benefits, it gives you an extraordinary amount of power to sit down and say, this is the new vision. And then having, say, a journey visual that goes along with that to show them how these pieces fit together in a cohesive journey becomes very, very powerful and compelling when they know that things need to happen differently. But for people in the sales organization, in IT, they don't know the nuts and bolts of learning and modality blends the way that we do. So you'll have access to this as well in an editable format. And I'm going to include a couple of other goodies that aren't really part of this presentation, but I mentioned them. I talked about starting with who first and really looking at personas. That's something at Blanchard that's really important to us, because our clients, not unlike prior to coming to Blanchard, every client I work with, their leaders are in different places. They're doing different things. They might be in a warehouse. They might be on an oil rig. They might be in a retail environment. They might be in an office. They might be in a home office like me. And so starting with that persona, I think, especially if we're taking the time and the effort to really rethink how learning is happening and making it more effective, we've got to start with who first. Because if you're creating an experience for people who are in a myriad of different places, they've also got possibly different levels of access. Some people might be on the road. They might be on tablets. Other people might have a mobile device in a manufacturing facility. Other people might have limited access to computers, like in kiosks in a manufacturing space. And so those are really important considerations, and doing some good persona work up front can be really helpful for that. So I'll share the template for the persona design that we use at Blanchard and a couple of examples so that you can see an example of what good looks like, so that as you build your first, if you're not doing that, you have a tool to do it. And I'd actually, in the chat pane, I know that that's not the topic of this, but it's associated and very important part of the conversation. Put a Y in the chat pane if you are using personas, and put an N in the chat pane if the concept of personas, you're sort of familiar, but you're not using them. I'd love to see that. And there's a little latency, so it's going to take a moment for me to see your Ys and Ns populate. And actually, let's see. Okay, good. Okay, we got a lot of no's. If I have a moment at the end of this, and I may, it'll take me just a moment, but I'll pull up an example so I can show, because we do have a lot of folks who are not using them and not as familiar. And so I'll pull that up. But so this spreadsheet becomes really the roadmap. And then, a lot of people will ask, so, well, how do I think of what these new delivery options could be? What are the options? We'll talk about that. Oh, and I'll define personas. Persona is basically a vision of the person who you're building for, who you're solving for. And so in our case, it was for the individual contributor who is now not able to go to a live instructor-led training program, and maybe not even a virtual instructor-led training program, because in a client situation, where they've had people who were in offices, they're at their homes now. And we had people who were in shift work in facilities, and now they're on longer shifts, but they have even less time to be away from shift because of the demands that the world put on them with the pandemic. And so they no longer have 2 hours to go to a VILT. So for us, our persona was looking at, how are we going to reach these people in a way that resonates with them, that reaches them in the flow of their work. And so anyhow, that was our persona design. And it's deeper than your audience. It's the technology they have access to. What are they trying to get done in their work and in their life? What's getting in the way? What is their aptitude for technology? And from there, you're able to discern how likely, from a hypothesizing perspective, I could hypothesize the best methods to reach them, so that they can easily interact with their learning in a way that works for them. I've only got 5 or 10 minutes. I don't have 2 hours. Right? So exploring and experimenting. This is such a fun part. Although exploring doesn't have to be dangerous, doesn't always end up with an explosion in a lab. We did an awful lot of experimenting because, as I mentioned, when the world changed and we thought we were going to have, like, I don't know, if we were looking at creating a story arc, if Brittany and I created a story arc, we would have said the transformation we had to make at Blanchard, this is a 3-year transformation. And it was do or die, make it or die, literally. Close those doors up. And so the whole organization, and it was not just us, it was every aspect of the organization looking at how do we need to change everything about what we've done. So this is just a tiny microcosm of the overall change that was made at Blanchard. And it wasn't an evolution, it was a revolution, and it was extraordinary. So I'd like to hear what kind of exploration, before I show you the kinds of things that are possible to, how could we serve this up in a new way in that column? I think it's column G. I want to see some of the cool stuff that you have done in terms of exploring different ways of doing things and experimenting with learning solutions. In the last 12 months, in the last 18 months, I think probably between 18 and 24, we were all in shell shock pretty much. But I would love to see, if you did something cool, what was it? And go ahead and hit the chat pane. And I'll go ahead and I'm going to move along. Ooh, virtual learning community, sexy. I love it. Anytime we can create community and bring people together, we're doing some really extraordinary things. We're knocking down silos. We're creating employee community. Yeah, and we got a question. Brittany's asking the question, what virtual learning community, what platform are you using for that? systems training via Zoom. Oh, I love the choose your own adventure with e-learning modules. Those are awesome. Okay, so VLCs and Facebook, so cool. I know in a lot of organizations, Facebook is a tough one to get in, but boy, if you're able to get that whitelisted, it's pretty exciting. Storytelling through videos, virtual town halls, simulations, a great way for safe practice. Oh, I love it. Training videos. Let's see, ILT with social community discussion. Nothing totally recent, but added a scare factor right at the start of a course. Dude, it kind of, so I think it's Evan that said that. And I just said, dude, I'm sorry. I just get really excited when I talk about this stuff, but that's great. Kind of thinking about what is the impact of us not having this and not doing this. And quite frankly, suddenly the level of impact and high stakes in what we were building towards and delivering to our people has never mattered more, right? Very good. Content to audio, virtual bingo, generating emotions creates the hook. That is right, Brittany. I'm in Yammer. Prioritizing teams. We use Teams for so much great stuff. I mean, that was just the coolest brainstorm list. Escape rooms with gamification, love that. So hopefully you got some new ideas. We'll talk about how we think about, when we're going to be experimenting and prototyping, really collaborating your ideas with the client, right? Thinking through, and sometimes with your client, they might be open to be able to sit down and actually bang some of that cool stuff out in the spreadsheet with you. And then you bring your instructional design hat to the table and help them form that, right? So ideas with the client, and then prototyping live examples. I'll tell you, and I came clean. Brittany, hope this doesn't get me in trouble because I haven't told you this yet, but I came clean with the president of our company on a really important call 2 weeks ago that when we launched self-leadership, you're going to see what it looked like at the end. When we launched self-leadership in the collaborative online modality, that was where we went. It was a prototype that we knew from prior experience, Brittany and I and our team who designed, the author, a designer, we knew that it worked, but it wasn't fully built before they did a full company, all hands on deck pilot of the program. It was 6 weeks in length, and they started in week 1, and we were actually still building week 3. So we were prototyping with real live examples with all souls on board because we didn't really plan to pilot with everybody, but it got opened up to everybody. So again, do or die, why not, right? Name of the game. But then we piloted parts and programs we added to it based on feedback that we got along the way. And we were able to mature the design so that it became ready for us to offer as an open enrollment offering. It was very agile, again, terrifying, but exhilarating at the same time. We knew we could do it. We had all of the goods to do it. And then, of course, kind of as you pilot and collaborate, then certainly you're able to kind of really mature and stand up. But in the nature of the world that we were in, time mattered. And we didn't have time to build and bake something out and talk about it and think about it. We absolutely did not have the luxury of that time. And I think everyone on this call probably felt very similar pressure. So what were the kinds of things, and you all created an incredible brainstorm list, the kinds of things that are in that column G. What could it look like in something different? And so we put together a list of all the kinds of things, all the things. And our solution was self-leadership incorporated a lot of this. And so some really great self-serve stuff. There's some immersive stuff that can be included, gamification elements, some social learning pieces, group work. So this is also kind of a job aid that everyone will have kind of going away. And we also had that really great brainstorm. And so we're really looking at very, very nimble nuggets. And I think that we're actually going to have time to see the solution. Typically, when we have delivered this session, we haven't had time to actually go into the solution. So I'm going to see, let's see, I see that we've got a couple questions in the chat pane. So we'll get to those. But this is what the program looked like at the end. 6 weeks of experience built using the Intrepid platform. Intrepid is one of our partners, a cherished partner, because their platform, and there are other platforms out there that can that can support a overtime learning journey. What we really loved about Intrepid is the opportunity to build an experience that really offers the best of the best that the classroom has to offer, but also really gives a lot of control to our learners. And so week over week, we can see that the experience had learn and practice with their peers through assignments. So the assignments are actually in the platform and it's tile driven. So everything is micro learning nuggets. So we're talking 3 to 5 minutes. Some of the assignments might be a little longer, but then you can see kind of the content that we covered across each week of experience in these gray boxes. And then at the end of each week closes with a live 60-minute, what we call an Inspire session. And an Inspire session really it's almost the closing of this week of experience and opening the door to what's coming next. It's not a rehash of content. It's not a restate. It is an opportunity for our global cohort to come together at a defined time. And for clients that have needs, special needs, where they've got, truly a global cohort, we'll offer one early in the morning and offer one kind of in the afternoon so that we've got opportunities to catch everyone. The sessions are recorded, then they're shared up into the platform. But these Inspire sessions really are dialogue driven. And that way we're able to help build relationships with people who are in the cohort. They're able to come with their burning question about diagnosing. And they can, in week 3, they can come in and say, I'm really struggling with this skill. Can you help me? And our leadership experts, they have access. That's the whole premise, is providing first moment of learning happens in a self-directed way. And then when we really get into assimilation, it happens in a live session with an expert. And if you are in an organization that it provides customer care, so it's with your customer care experts. So think about your trainers who were delivering and are delivering your training today. Those experts come in and lead those sessions, dialogue driven, with a number of prompts and breakouts. So it's very quick, very exciting. They're meeting people that they never would have met, and they get an opportunity to get really tough questions answered. So, all right, we're going to go back to how many assets. Do you remember your guess? It was 139 assets. And just a quick special promo. If anybody wants to see the program, we've got a promotion just for people who are in this session. It's typically $199. But if you want to see what an experience looks like in the Intrepid platform, our self-leadership program specifically, certainly grab that promo code. 139. Now you're probably thinking assets. It was 8 hours of ILT. Typically our asset in an ILT is a PowerPoint, it's facilitator notes, there might be some videos, and you were absolutely right. What we did is we stripped out the videos, we stripped out any kind of an activity, and we laid it out in that spreadsheet. And then from there, we could say, all right, how are we going to modify this activity that is an ILT activity for people who are in a virtual platform and practicing this skill based on what they've learned? They're practicing it for themselves for the first time independently. What does that look like? Right? We created all kinds of things from the facilitator's notes. So using the facilitator's notes as the inputs to create, for instance, a script for one of our instructors to be able to share along the way. So that's what the experience looked like. And I am going to exit out. And I know that we've got some questions in the chat pane. I'm going to open up a couple things because we do have just a little more time. So we'll share the persona template so you can see it. And actually, hang tight. I'm actually going to share a persona that was created. It was not created for one of our learning solutions. Well, it was, but not for one of our corporate offerings. And so this, and those of you who are ATD people know who Myra is. Myra is one of my best friends, Brittany, Myra, Ann, bam, Brittany, Ann, Myra, bam. Anyways, this is an example of what our personas look like when we're building them for our clients. And so we've got our person, we've got a bit of personality profile. So we know what is kind of the angle and how this person shows up in the world. What is her role? Where does she live? What is she doing? Technology usage, it's really important because when I start thinking about the kind of data points about Myra, about her personality, about her technology appetite, I can derive pretty closely, chances are, how is Myra going to learn best? Okay. And so for this specific work we're doing, it's our philanthropic arm at Blanchard, and it's building out self leadership, but for kids, specifically for kids who they're overprogrammed, they're bullied at school, and we're building out a program that's going to reach potentially millions of young people. And so we had a design session, a collaborative design session, always starts with a collaborative design, where we're looking at who are the people that we're solving for, and really giving a great think on who we're solving for, and what their life looks like, because this helps me to inform what I'm going to build, right? And so just samples of these, so you can kind of get a feel for how we're looking at them. We're looking at them as holistic human beings. And whether it's kids who would go through a program, or it's an adults who would go through one of Blanchard's programs, we're really thinking about this narrative here at the top. It's really important for us to think about what's going on in their mind. What are they trying to get done in their life, in school or in their job, as we saw with Myra. But basically, these personas help us truly start in the right place. And from there, we take our 8 hours and we blow it out into micro, nimble nuggets. So we'll pause there. We've got some questions. I won't be able to show you the Intrepid platform. However, at Blanchard, we just did, Blanchard and our partner Intrepid, we did a webinar in January. And actually, Brittany, if you can fire that up into the chat pane, a link to that, that'd be great. You'll be able to see the actual experience and how it was built. You'll be able to get almost a behind the scenes look. Now, there are some clients talking about their programs on Intrepid, but the first half of the session is all about the self-leadership, collaborative online modality. So you can, if you're interested in digging a little deeper in that, you can do that. So questions, let's see. So we had 9 votes. Preferred competence measurement techniques to confirm learning effectiveness. Well, bam. At Blanchard, we approach things, and we're going to have a white paper that's coming out on this very soon. Talks about what we call the 5 critical success factors: executive sponsorship, executive sponsorship, integration with organizational pillars, things that are happening, what's important culturally, elegant design, sustainment, and measurement. For us, measurement looks like we're going to measure at the point of learning. We're not going to pre-assess. We're going to look at after formal moment of learning, because if we do a pre-assessment, if we do a pre-measurement, they'll always overstate. They will always overstate. And so we give them their first moment of learning. We measure at the end, and it's a 1-2. Did you like it? Did you learn something? But we also ask about your readiness to be able to apply the skills, both before learning and now. We're able to show an extraordinary change there. And then 60 to 90 days, we're going to come back again, and we're going to ask them questions that are at that very level 3 and at very level 4, and being able to get there. Oftentimes in measurement, we also include what we call a success case method, where we choose a selection of our participants and we actually conduct an interview with them. And we have, obviously it's the same questions, but it's really getting at, for example, for a leader who has gone through SL2. Before you went through the SL2 program, how often were you connecting with your people about their goals? And talk to me about how often you're doing that today, and talk to me about the difference you're seeing in their performance, right? Suddenly, we're able to monetize the value of the learning. We call it success case method. And so that's what I would suggest. So a level 1, level 2, we do not use pre-assessment as a measurement because people will overstate. Let's see. Okay, great. We've also got, I see Brittany is in there answering some good stuff. So recommend the most successful versatile game. We've got an answer in there as well. Let's see. Just scanning through resources, templates. They're going to be uploaded so that when you come back, you can go into the recording of this session and they'll be there for you. And I know I've only got a moment left. Yep. You can actually share the exact spreadsheet, and it's floppy copy. It was just a tool that Brittany and I built for when we were working on some stuff. So certainly make it your own, brand it, do those kinds of things. Let's see, what else do we have? Ooh, social media learning. We haven't really gotten into social media learning, although certainly for self leadership, at the end they receive a digital credential. It's provided by our partner Credly, and basically it's a portable digital credential that when you complete the learning, you can carry that forward, and it shows street value, so people can click on that on your signature line on your social media, see what you've learned. And you can use those credentials to actually create communities of practice on, say, a LinkedIn or a private Facebook group. And so from there, you're really able to layer in some social learning opportunities. Now, I know I'm at the end of time. I'm so sorry. I could talk with you about so much stuff forever. I just am so passionate about the work that we're all doing, and the difference that we're all able to make in our community. So thanks so much for coming today, and connect with us on, please do connect with us on LinkedIn. And let's see, there we are. And we'll be at LSCon in April, and we'll be speaking at ICE in May. And of course, if you haven't checked out that scavenger hunt, pull out your device, fire up Zapper, and zap that code and take your little trip back in time. We will see you soon, and please don't be strangers. I'd love it if you'd connect with us on LinkedIn, and we'll see you soon. Okay? Bye.